It's been a long week. I have chewed on peace for 6 days, and I'm still having problems with the text. It's the way it starts. Comfort ye, comfort ye. And I'm looking for the comfort. I don't know about you, but the world's in a mess. And I'm more in the scripture of peace, peace, and there is no peace. It's just a difficult time. And so I don't have any really sparkling words or things to say to you, as usual. And so I thought we would try an experiment to see if we can come at a way to discover the peace that Christ has that's different than the world's peace. And I want to start with some questions about where there is no peace. I think we're pretty sure of those kind of things. And this Sunday is one of those Sundays where there aren't rhetorical questions. Okay? So, if you'll call out a place where you don't see peace and we need it, then I'm going to repeat it so our folks in digital land, our worshipers, can know that they're participating too, okay? I'm going to just start by the obvious thing, Ukraine and Gaza. The problem is that if we said every place there's a war, we wouldn't have time for the rest of worship. The Global Conflict Tracker of the Council of Foreign Relations says that this week there are 27 major armed conflicts now on the planet. 27. From Gaza and Ukraine to regional genocides on every continent. Our wars are more culture wars, seeds sown a long time ago that just kept growing, and they become an implicit part of the culture, either to the like of some or the dislike of others. So let's just call out some things. What have you got?
Political peace.
Political?
Yes, we need peace in the political.
Yeah, we've got political wars. They're very productive. They're very productive for the people that want them productive, who finance the wars. Let's just get honest about that. What else?
On our streets.
On our streets. On our streets. How, Jeanette?
Killings, murders.
Killing, murders. Right, just sheer murders, right? How many of you have children that were in a lockdown Friday? Right. We have false, fake messages that went out to schools all across Texas that the Russians were going to get into the schools with guns, and parents were calling our children's center locked down. We have to respond to those. The FBI had already said they were fake, but we had to respond to those. What else? Borders. Yeah, the problem with borders. What are the problems with the border? Borders are not a big problem. They're just lines on a map that really don't exist. What's the real problem?
It's the conflict in fear.
It's two things. It's the conflict in countries where innocent people are fleeing for good reasons, and the fact that they're coming to us and they become what? Immigrants. We call them immigrants. That we forget that we were one time, don't we? I'm sorry. I'm descended from the first rector of the Jamestown Church in Jamestown, Virginia in 1611 when he showed up. And I asked my father why, and he said, well, my guess is he got in trouble with the bishop. Okay, what else?
Political pawns.
Political pawns. These things we jockey with them, and we're powerless to kind of stop that, we think. What else?
Poverty.
Poverty. Genuine poverty. And there's a lot of genuine poverty. You know, discrimination of a lot of different kinds. Of a lot of different kinds. And we need to name out loud some of those different kinds of discrimination. Racism. Racism.
Violence in the home.
Right. You know, race is the oldest war we have in America that we haven't ever solved. And it's still a war, isn't it? It is. It's, you know, what else?
Domestic violence.
Domestic violence.
Mental health issues.
Mental health. Mental health. Drug addiction. Yeah, which, and you know why we've got a lot of drug addiction. There's a lot of money to be made in drug addiction. You know, both legally, pharma, and on the street corner. You know, and we put those kids that get put on a street corner in jail for 25 years. And we don't do anything to the presidents of banks that launder the money. It might, you know, what else?
Our deficient healthcare system.
Yeah, the healthcare system. There's a form of discrimination that is disgraceful, right?
Second Amendment.
Second Amendment, the whole problem.
Yes.
That's right. What else?
Social media.
Social media. Yeah. God. Yeah. What is that anyway? I don't know. Some new thing. School shootings, water. I mean, isn't it? So, what's the common thread in a whole lot of these things? Greed. Greed. Fear. Fear of what? Yeah, there's always a kind of us and them, isn't there?
People are afraid their position will be
Right.
taken away if someone else has.
That's right. They're afraid of what will happen to them, and so they have to get rid of that kind of thing. Yeah, I've thought about this a bunch, and a way to say it is, what drives this is the fear of a different thing, a different kind of person. Oh, and by the way, we didn't mention sexual identity issues. Or reproductive issues, or, you know, so I don't want to leave those out. So, but the problem is, people want peace because that's what they've got, and they don't want less of it. And they don't want someone coming and getting some of their peace, so they have less peace. Does that make sense?
Austin, is peace the status quo? And is status quo really not equitable? I mean, is it not transcendent?
That's exactly the issue. Because for some people, peace is the status quo. And let's get really honest, because it's Advent. Most of us live pretty much at peace, and we're worried about the peace out there. On a comparative basis, we all live at peace. My friend Rob Mueller at Divine Redeemer has been witness to 3 shootings within 3 blocks of his church. He walked out the door of his office one day and saw a guy kill a guy. So it's the difference that's the problem, and the difference is driven by fear and by envy and by worry and loss of status and all of those kinds of things. And what that contributes to is thinking of peace as peacekeeping. I want to keep the peace I have. I don't want to give away any of my peace. And they're coming to get it. And they're a threat. Right? There's another kind of peace. We've heard the word already in worship. What's the other kind of peace? It's peacemaking. Yeah, that's it. Now I check the definition all the time because, I don't want to use words incorrectly. The 3 definitions of peace that were in my computer, dictionary: freedom from, and freedom from, and freedom from. Peacekeeping. I want to be free from dissension. I want to be free from argument. I want them to leave me alone. I want them to go somewhere. The 4th one was peace as in, I just want to read this because I want to get this right. A ceremonial handshake or kiss exchanged during a service in some churches, now usually only in the Eucharist, symbolizing Christian love and unity. I hope we're doing more than that.
Bullying in schools.
Bullying in schools is
Bullying.
it's a horrible issue. It's a horrible issue. In 1995, 97, I learned that 1 in 5 women in America have cancer. Walk into a restaurant, see 6 women eat at a table, and one of them has cancer. The other 1 in 5 was college women and rape. 1995. What's wrong with the world? Well, we've got to find some kind of solution, and peacekeeping is actually trying to get a ceasefire. We voted against that, by the way. I didn't vote against that. We didn't vote against that. It's time we did something direct and positive and strong about the people that vote for that kind of stuff. We've got to stand up and talk to friends that do the voting for that kind of stuff. It's become a Christian responsibility not to lambaste them where they won't listen, but it's time to start asking our friends that vote for that kind of stuff, why do you do that? To try to help them to start thinking. So, peacekeeping is ceasefire. And sometimes it's really necessary as a step, as a prelude to peacemaking. Because it's really hard to try to work for peace when someone's shooting at you. Right? But it's always a step. Good question. I'm old enough. I don't remember this, but at least I was taught about it. It's the Marshall Plan. The best example on a world globe stage of peacemaking. It had a lot of self-interest in it, obviously, but at least it was trying to move to something different for everybody, and there was a lot of giving up in cost on all sides to get that done. So let's look back at the first century because in the first century they had exactly the same problems. And in 720, in Isaiah's time, when this was written, they had the exact same problems. And these problems don't seem to be going away. And so the question is, what was it about the way Jesus did things in that first century in text and in the way he lived that was his different kind of peace that the world did not know?
There was nothing that he needed from anybody. There was nothing that he had nothing to lose.
There was nothing he needed from anyone. He had nothing to lose. Isn't that an insightful thing?
He accepted everyone.
He accepted everyone. Right. Sins and all. He invited people in. He went out to them.
Love for enemies.
He had love for enemies.
He gave and take. He gave rather than take.
Yeah, he was a giver rather than a taker. You know, peacekeepers say they want to make everybody equal. You know, the pursuit of happiness, equality of all, kind of things. And the difference in Jesus is he recognized that everybody was different. Every single person is different. And he treated everyone as who they were. He had this understanding that all of us are just human beings, created what in the image of God, created in this amazing representation of the spiritual reality of love. He gave us a really simple strategy to translate all that. You know, it's really hard often for us to kind of figure out how to do something. And so a lot of us live by proverbs. Politicians know how to manipulate proverbs terrifically. They put them on slogans and that kind of thing, and then they go do whatever they're going to do. But they're buzz things. This is more than a buzz things. It's a rule. It's a rule for living. It's in the 3 chapters of the Rules for Christian Living that we mistakenly call the Sermon on the Mount. Hope you remember that. It's not a sermon. Treat others the way you want to be treated. It's that simple. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Do you want to be treated like an enemy? Then why would you treat anyone like an enemy? You know, if you want to be a good neighbor, be a good neighbor. If you need to love your enemies, because if you don't love your enemies, they don't have a reason to love you. They've got a real good reason to stay enemies. A lot of things Jesus said just make common sense. They're not idealistic things that we just can ignore because the world doesn't work that way. The problem is the world doesn't work that way. And you know what? The other problem is the reason it does is that we're not willing to try a simple thing very often. So we need to treat everyone just simply like a unique human being. I want to give you an example of a really smart thing that someone has dreamed up to do that models peacemaking in a way that deflects and diffuses peacekeepers. Rob Mueller, great friend. I've told people my whole career that I'm a pretend Christian and Rod's a real one. You know him, don't you? He is. He is. He got this idea that with all the gun violence he's lived with and with all the gun violence that the whole culture lives with, that the problem is we're always yelling about guns. And we play right into the hands of the people who sell them. Did you know that you sell 25% more guns in an election year? Which means you sell 3 million, and I don't mean hunting rifles. I mean guns that are built to kill people. Assault weapons, automatic pistols. You sell about 2 to 3 million of them in an ordinary year in America, and another million on an election year. It's a game they play to make money, and they're making lots of money out of us playing into the wrong fight. So Rob said, let's change the argument to human lives and human deaths. T-shirts. It's really hard to argue with the number of deaths by violent gunfire in Texas when it's 2,700 people in 5 years. Those aren't guns guys use to go hunting. Right? It's a peacemaking thing that changes the argument. And we have got to be creative and we've got to be smart, and we need to quit playing into their hands to foster their stuff. We need to get rid of some guns. But folks, there are already 30 million guns in America. We're short of the right kind of totalitarian dictatorship. That's not going to happen, because they're just going to start killing. They already are, right? So we've got to work at both ends of the stick, but we've got to get smarter. We've got to support this kind of work, and we've got to support this kind of work in other places to honor people and to raise the human factor, because every person that's poor is a truly human being. Every person who's discriminated is a truly unique human being. Every person deserves to be able to live like a human being. And if that costs us something, it needs to start costing us something. Because we live really well for being a human being. There's one other thing I'm going to say, and I figure I'm running long, and I'm sorry, but when I was at First Austin, there were two guys that were really had been in the church a long, long time. Wonderful guys, Don Lovering and Milt Sparks. And I didn't ask their permission because they would tell me, don't do that. Before I was ever there, they had an associate named Helen Bowman. She was a really wonderful, great person. She was a terrific person. They were way ahead of the curve on women in ministry and that kind of thing. And Helen was offering a marriage enrichment program, a thing, an 8-week course kind of deal. And everyone gathered in the church, and Milt and Don showed up. And they asked if they could join. He said, we can't be officially married, but we've been married for a long, long time. And every marriage needs enrichment, so we thought we'd show up. Kind of thing. Great guys. I'm having supper with them one night, and we were talking, and we got into a more serious conversation about the whole problem of sexual identity. And part of that is the way that the culture likes to divide all of us into male versus female. When any geneticist will tell you, that sexuality is a spectrum, I have green eyes. How many people in the room have green eyes? Yeah? Well, the rest of you, there's something wrong with you. You see? That's how you get an argument going. You make two sides to things that don't have a side. So we were talking about that. And I'm sitting there and I thought, okay, I'm a pretty traditional kind of sexual person, and I know I'm different than some and all that. But there's one thing that we don't ever really talk about much. And that is that knowing the two of you has given me something I didn't have. And not just an understanding about what it means to be homosexual, You have given me an insight into gifts you have that I need for my life. You see the world in a way I don't see the world. And because of that, I'm richer because I know you and listen to you. Because I don't have it all together. It's not that you're equal to me, it's that you're superior to me in some ways. Because none of us have it all. Does that make perfect sense? I live in a house of musicians. I'm an oppressed minority group. And what I figured out is that these people over here, they see the world differently. They have insights into the world that I don't get. And one of the reasons that I have learned to love great music of all kinds, all kinds, is that when I'm in that setting, I have access to something I don't understand. And it makes me a richer person. Okay? So here's how this ends. You want to have worship without musicians? God, no. You may as well go to sleep at the beginning. I apologize to you for missing the Nicene Creed when we did communion, Lord's table, for missing the Lord's Prayer twice. But I grew up in a church that was full of music. And I heard Mozart in a church of music. And I know most of the inspiration gospel hymns that some of you know. And I can sing a lot of the hymns by heart because I was in 4 different hymnals: Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, and others. And my faith is in those hymns. It's not in sermons. I have a lot of faith in text because I actually read the Bible. Did you get that one? I was trying to sneak up on your blind side. I keep telling you this, and I'm going to tell you again. You can't know Jesus unless you read the portraits. You can't know Jesus unless you read the portraits. That's why they're there. There are 4 portraits there. Each of them has a different little look at the guy. And if you read them through, you get the whole picture and you learn the person instead of just a quote story about him. It's not really a story, it's an event. Okay? So, where do we go from here? If you were listening, you already know. You memorize that golden rule. When you're in the checkout line at H-E-B, you have a chance to treat that checker like a human being, a unique human being. And there are a lot of people that go past her that don't. When we see people on the street, they are human beings. And we can either keep our peace and give them $1 so we can feel like we're helping them, or we can work to help the homeless. Do you see how this works? It's a change. It's a change from one way of looking at the world to another way of looking at the world. And that's why it's not the Christian faith. It's the Christian life. It's something we learn to live over the course of time. And you have an easier chance of learning it the more you know the guy. So that's kind of how it works. So let's go out and try to do that. In your life, let's do that. And let's do that as a church. Because every single one of you has a uniqueness that's needed in the service of Christ. Every single one of you. And I may have something like some of them, but I guarantee you I don't have all of them. And I need your gift, and we need each other's gift. And if we do that together, guess what happens? The body of Christ in the world becomes a body of peacemakers.